There is an agenda, there is an addendum, there have been changes. Any member of council wish to add to this list? Councillor.
I don't know that I'm going to leave about 6:30, but if we can direct the meeting on Mr. Mayor, I'll be back.
Isn't that a nice thing to ask?
You can't guarantee that.
Consideration be given. Councillor Powell.
Under other business, physician recruitment report.
Recruitment report. Thank you. Anyone else? Addition? Noted. Thank you. So the agenda addition, addendum plus addition. Motion, please. Councillor Coleman, second by Councillor Miller. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest by any member of council at this time? Not. Delegations, and the first is Rachel Hofstetter, overlaps consultant, County of Brant Library, Strategic Plan 2017-2019. And we had approved this presentation earlier in the year. Welcome. Please proceed when you're ready. And you're accompanied by the chairman.
Your worship, if it's all right with you, I'd like to introduce Rachel to council.
Thank you.
Council, it was about a year ago that the library board came and spoke to you and told you of our plan to have a new strategic plan. And somewhere along the way, we came back to you and asked you for a little extra support. And this would be a great opportunity for me to once again thank you for that. We had the possibility of working with Overlap on this endeavor to make our new strategic plan. We were very excited about their proposals, and again, couldn't have done it without you, and it's happened. And I'm so excited to be here tonight to have Rachel share it with you. This is going to be our North Star. This will be the document that will frame our initiatives and our plans for the entire County of Brant Public Library system. And over the time that we spent with Overlap, they told us at the beginning that we would kind of grow to love them, and they didn't disappoint. You'll only have a few minutes with Rachel, but Overlap's all about building relationships, and I'm excited to be able to introduce her to you tonight to share our strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr.
Rachel?
Wagner, Chairman of the Library Board. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Overlap is located in Kitchener. We're not too far away. I live actually in Plattsville, so just a little farther down the Nith, and I've been watching the river like I'm sure you guys have been as well. We work with libraries on many different occasions, and it's been a real privilege to work with you guys here because of the innovation that we walked into. There are a lot of library systems that are just making incremental changes, and one of the things that we noticed about this library when we started with a historical scan, even just looking back the last 6 years, was the amount of initiatives and things that have been tried. And that's not a small feat. As we look at trends across libraries in general, it's change. There is nothing but change. They're historical institutions that are now being thrust into this state of constant change. And one of the things that we noticed about your library system here was a deep connection to values and to wanting to establish and continue to hold a place that becomes a node for the community. And when you think about library systems, there's not very many institutions left that are in almost every community across Canada, big and small. And so I just wanted to start with that just to say that I think you have an incredible resource right here, and it was a pleasure to get started. So we use a little bit of a different approach. Many of you have probably participated in strategic planning. Many times it's a small group of people that start at the top and kind of filter down what the directions will be. There'll be a bit of consultation and talking, but it's usually a small group that kind of filters down. we take that approach and we flip it on its head, and we start with community engagement, going out and understanding what are the needs, what are the desires, what are people trying to accomplish in the County of Brant, and how might the library partner and come alongside with those goals to create a relevant plan that actually will be used and make a difference in the community. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the construction of the plan, and as we go through, we can do a few questions. We've intentionally used very accessible language. Any member of the community should be able to engage with the plan and understand what that means. So this is kind of the foundation, the building of the plan, and we start with the vision and the mission, and we're going to reacquaint you with those tonight if you don't remember. And then the values along the side. So how do we want to work? Then we create the strategic directions. How will we be different? What do we want to accomplish in the next 3 to 5 years? And then we look at obstacles, and that is always the worst part of the strategic planning. We get really excited about what do we want to achieve, and then we look at what are all the things that are going to keep us from actually achieving that. And then we get to work in starting to ideate and come up with new and innovative ways to actually deal with those obstacles, and that's where we create the launch points. Those become your action streams. That's what the library will operationalize to actually get to those strategic directions. All right. So once we put those together, you'll see that there's 7 directions that are there, and we're going to go through each of those and make sure you're familiar with them. All right. A future-ready organization with an agile culture. And this is about being ready to nurture a culture that matches the needs to consistently adapt or constantly adapt and secure resources to enable us to act on new opportunities. This could include investing in technology upgrades and seeking creative ways to augment existing funding sources. So it's not just resting on laurels, it's being proactive. The next strategic direction is a convenient, patron-centered services and programs. Convenient, patient, or patron-centered. Sorry, I was at Guelph General Hospital all afternoon working with patients there. We'll create a library service that is 21st century ready. It is a pleasant, streamlined, hassle-free experience. We want to make it easier for patrons to learn about programs, register for events, and conduct other library transactions online. A safe and welcoming and equitable system. And equitable is a really important word here, not just equality, but making sure it is accessible and equitable throughout the community. One of the things that we often talk about is the digital divide and how some kids are being left behind, for example. Some have access to technology and they gain a confidence and they're able to go forward. What a lovely opportunity for a community to make sure that everyone has access to these 21st century needs. Adaptive spaces for meeting diverse needs. And again, in the engagement, which included going out and doing street teams, I'm not sure if anybody saw people around town doing that, that's literally a clipboard and a survey and going out and talking to random people as you meet them. Went to hockey arenas, downtown, kind of all over. I actually came I was in Paris on one of the days doing it, and it was cold. But we still had people who were delighted to give their opinion. And part of what we're doing there is trying to understand, what are you trying to accomplish in life? What are the things that are important to you? And then looking for opportunities to align with those needs. And part of making that need, or creating a space where those needs can be met, it has to be diverse and be able to use for a variety of purposes. Fresh spaces for creation and incubation of new ideas. Creativity is the commodity of the future market. We talk a lot about lean, and in maybe some of your different lines of work, you'll come across this efficiency and making things leaner and trying to cut costs and make it better. And when we talk about lean, we talk about like a horse and buggy. You know, a horse and buggy, we're trying to get from point A to point B, and we try to understand what are the needs that we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to move goods, we're trying to move people. But when we start to just take lean approach, where we start to just optimize and make things better, we get a faster horse, we get a streamlined buggy. We don't really create anything new. When we step back and we look at what are the needs, and then we try to approach it in a new way, that's how we jump from a horse and buggy to a car. That's where we start to spark new ideas. And what an opportunity, once again, for this community to have spaces that inspire and give opportunity for creation and innovation. Increase effectiveness to meet challenging community needs. So this one is to meet the growing and changing community needs. There's new people coming into town. They have expectations sometimes from living in different areas about what their library service can provide for them. What level of service are they expecting? Access to what types of technology or what type of programming? By more effectively leveraging the skills of our staff and volunteers, we can learn from the community and better respond to what we learn. That's the other thing that has been approached and, well, not approached, I guess adopted by this library, is that innovative approach and willing to be reactive. So it's not about setting a strategic plan. We're here today. There's where we want to be in 3 years. We'll check in with the community in 3 years and see if we hit it. It's about constantly checking in, getting that feedback. Are we hitting the right mark? Are we moving it forward? A library is the place to be. So we'll help people understand what we offer and build the library's reputation as the place to be. As the library continues to grow and offer more opportunities to the community, we will work to increase promotion of our services. And we hear this over and over again. Libraries for our age and older, we knew how to use the library, we knew what to expect when we walked in, and it was the same for a lot of years. Libraries are changing now. There's so many new things that are happening. There's so many great opportunities for all ages. What we often stumble and are challenged by is the communication of those services and really getting the public to understand and become involved and see how that they can benefit from the library. So those were the strategic directions, and now very quickly we'll just refresh the values. And the values are the way that we approach the work. So, community innovation and development, client-centered service, equitable access, service team excellence, intellectual freedom, cooperation, and respect. So these become guiding principles. As every new program, as every new step is created, we have to come back. Are we aligned with our values? Are we creating equity in our community? Mission. So a great mission statement articulates what we do, describes how we do it, showcases the value we bring. And this is our mission statement. The County of Brant Public Library is dedicated to cultivating a culture of community, literacy, knowledge, and understanding. It's incredible. It's a big mission, it's powerful, and to operationalize that makes a difference in the lives of your citizens. Vision. A great vision statement states the long-term desired change. It's easy to remember and repeat. It's not too long. Everyone in the organization, everyone in the system, the library system, should know the vision and know how their job contributes to that vision every day so that they can make it real. And it's explore today, discover tomorrow. So this community engagement piece, which I've mentioned a few times, it's critical. It is about understanding the needs of community and making sure that this plan is responsive, that it is incorporating. People won't use the library if it's not meeting their needs. People won't be learning and they won't be able to accomplish the literacy mission if people aren't engaged. So explore today and help our community discover tomorrow. So the launch points. These are, again, less public-facing in the sense of this is not necessarily what will be shown to the entire community, but just to give you a sense of what the library will be operationalizing and creating in their business plans. It's not super detailed, but just to give you an idea. So those were the goals, so just to remind you where we're at. Then we had obstacles. And then these are in response to all the things that are going to hold us back. These become our launch points. So we will try new and innovative approaches to engage and communicate with the community. We will engage and involve stakeholders differently to achieve the goals of the plan. So who are the stakeholders, and making sure they each have a voice at the table. We will leverage community engagement in new ways. We did stakeholder labs, which allow us to go deep, and then we did street teams, which are short burst interviews. So we get a lot of people versus going deeper and really understanding a few people. We will sow the seeds for growth while watering our resources. I love that one. We'll create a branch outside of the branch. So looking for new innovative ways to take the library to where people are. We will empower and equip staff to lead the change. Working up in Ottawa recently with a group of librarians, as they start to look at the trends and robotics coming in and the use of cell phones and starting to like all of the technology questions. People used to come in with an e-reader and say, I don't even know how to take it out of the box. I need your help. And the librarians, well, I don't know that version. I don't know what that is. And they were like, we can't be everything to everybody. But how do we equip our librarians to be able to get them to the right answers, to help people get to the right answers, and help the community really empower themselves and take on technology in the new ways? We look at library school, what are they learning there? And so this library is ahead of the curve and saying, how are we going to support our staff so they can meet the needs of our community? And they really are ahead of the curve that way. The library is a very versatile institution. The library continues to adapt. And, you know, if we don't change, we don't stay alive. And this was one of the quotes that came out of the 2-day strategic plan, where there was a lot of Post-it notes and a lot of work and a lot of discussion, and 17 very exhausted participants by the end. But that really does sum it up. We have to be willing to change. And I'm delighted to present this plan to you and highlight the group that is ready to do the work and ready to be that change. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yep. Thanks. Thank you.
Questions? Or would you
Sure.
be prepared?
I'd be happy to answer questions.
Councillor
Yes.
Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you for your presentation. I'm just curious, when you do these street interviews, I'm sure you've done them in larger municipalities and stuff like that, do you find that the needs are very similar regardless of the size of the communities, or are there different needs within a larger community?
So we do find that the needs can be very different. So for example, we were doing some work in Brampton, and over again, we just heard about education jobs. Doing work down in Bruce County, there's a lot of seasonal people, they wanted just recreational reading. So it is different from community to community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just curious if there was some sort of pattern that's out there that you're basing a lot of this on.
No, we do this, so what was created was an insights report unique to this community, and so we take all of the feedback and all of the insights, and we start to look at them and we theme them, and then it's unique for this community.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Carley, you had your hand up first. You not wanted to go ahead?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. When you collect all this information and the data, you get a sort of a pie that gives you so many squares of what people are looking for and that. In your presentation, I didn't really see a real game changer on how it's going to mold itself together and become a solid, so to speak, because there's so many fragments that you're going to have to deal with. Which fragments do you choose, pick, and take to make that and to create the game changer? Because you see a lot today on people saying, well, do I need the library? Mm-hmm. I'm a single person. I've got my computer, I can get everything off of there. Couples today are using computers a lot better than we've ever done before. But you've got young couples who have children who want to get the kids to the library to learn about things, to different cultural things, everything like that goes with it. Seniors as well, same thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to figure out how you collect that data to create that game changer to be able to build that library.
So that's a great question. The game changer for what we're proposing here is that it's empathy-based, that it is actual feedback from the community, so it's not somebody imposing what the needs are. The way we design the survey, we don't say, what do you want from your library? Because you know what? People will answer with what their traditional view, or they'll say, I won't use a library. What we ask is, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to do in your life? And then we're taking this plan to be able to map alongside the goals of the community so that the library really can be in service of what individuals in the community are trying to accomplish. I hope that's helpful. Great.
Councillor Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter, thank you so very much for the presentation. You mentioned about community involvement, and because our community is so geographically big, spread out, can you tell me what area that you surveyed to find out the needs and desires of the community?
So I know that they went throughout the community. I can't give you the specifics, and maybe we can follow up. I just don't have that here. I wasn't personally out in all of where my team went, but I know that they were definitely looking at in-town and looking at rural and trying to assess the different parts. And I don't know if we can get you the specific locations, but we also invited people in, so geography was part of it.
The reason I ask is because I've been out in the county quite a bit, and I've been asking in Paris more than in the county. And no one knows anything about the new strategic plan or the actions that are involved in it, and I just wanted to know where you were to talk to these people to find out their input, that was all.
Yes, so the actual promotion of the plan won't have begun yet. So it was about community involvement in order to get a sense of the needs. And so that's a very targeted, and it's a qualitative approach as opposed to quantitative, and budget constraints obviously dictate some of that. So for example, we had 123 people that were involved at bus stops, events, volunteer fire halls, tractor clubs, city streets, that sort of thing, so hitting different parts. There were additional 446 people that participated in an online and paper survey, and then stakeholder labs, which are bringing in individuals from different groups. So for example, young moms or teenagers that say, I don't need a library, or seniors, and bringing people together to start to have smaller focus groups on understanding what they're trying to accomplish. So the wider distribution of the plan would be yet to come, and that actually relates beautifully to one of the action streams or the launch points about getting out into the community and starting to share that so that people can understand that involvement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer?
Thank you, Your Worship. This seemed really high. And I know that this is an overview, but I don't see how this is going to be implemented and with timelines on the ground and stuff like that. The other thing is I'm chair of community services, and I don't see a lot of, in this at all, real collaboration between the library and what we do in community services, because I'd hate to see a lot of overlap. Like, I'm a big believer in libraries, the ability for people to better themselves with whatever happens to be going on during the day, and yet I feel just this kind of a silo type thing going on with library.
Yep.
And I know Gay will assure me that that's not the case, and I see that, but in the strategic plan, it doesn't really show big collaboration between what we're doing in the county and what we're doing at the library, because I see libraries as strategically important in community services, and yet I don't see that work going on between community services and library. I know there's some things that they do together, but I think that could be built up so much more. And so 2 points, I guess, just, how do we, these lovely buzzwords and everything that we see scattered throughout this presentation, very nice. How do we see that on the ground? And number two is I would say your biggest stakeholder is the County of Brant. And I don't see that collaborative approach coming through in the strategic plan. I see just the library is the library, and I don't think it should be that way. I think the library should be very, very much involved in what the rest of the County of Brant is doing as far as community services and halls and stuff like that. So I'd like to see that coming more out of the strategic plan. Thank you.
Thanks. So just in response to the question, I totally agree that the stakeholders need to be aligned. And the second launch point is we will engage and involve stakeholders differently to achieve the plans of the goal, or the goals of the plan. And I'm at my office, I'm in charge of operationalizing our strat plan, and we use this exact same process. So what happens is we start to operationalize each year. So each part gets broken down within the system, so within the organization, and different people will own different parts of the plan. So the board itself, the library board, would be the one approving the action plan that breaks it down into those nitty-gritty pieces, but I totally understand there needs to be really tactical things that you can get started on. And that's what this plan is supposed to be, a little less prescriptive so that it can be reactive. Often we see in planning, we do waterfall. So this is where I want to be in 3 years. We're going to do A plus B plus C to E to get to that final destination. And what it doesn't allow is for us to be reactive to changing conditions. The point of this plan is to use a design cycle that's iterative. So we're going to make a step forward, we're going to be aligned with this, and then we're going to seek feedback. So part of that diverse stakeholder group is saying, this is what the library's planning on doing. How does it align with community services? How is that aligning with this part of the community? And making sure that it is collaborative. And I agree with you, it's not successful if it is not responsive to all stakeholders. Totally agree.
Councillor Powell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter. In the world of libraries today, there seems to be two big streams. One is the IT technical, and it changes so quick, you almost have to have the library partner up with a small IT outfit to combine the two. On the other side, we have the social still. For example, we're on 2 rivers. Should we be lending fishing poles to youngsters to take advantage of the river? I know you've had the writer in residence, which has been a wonderful facility, but we still have those 2 aspects, I think, the social and the IT, and maybe they don't blend together for everybody, but both sides are very important as we go forward.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm delighted to hear you even just making a suggestion like that, because as technology increases, our isolation is also increasing, and people are craving connection, and we see it in libraries all over. Part of it is, how do we get that word out? How do we include? And back to the other point, we have to involve others who are stakeholders, whether it's the kids or whomever it might be, in co-designing, and that's what this plan is really left open to do, to be able to co-design and move it forward. So thank you, great comment.
Councillor Gatler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, Rachel, have you ever been involved in libraries that, in this day and age, we mentioned technology and how much that is changing the library. Have you ever been involved in a total makeover of a library within an existing space because they don't need as many books as they used to? They've got technology and other venues to get information and data from, and I just wonder how successful those projects have been.
Yeah, that's a great question. We did some work with London Public Library that was actually looking at their space and how it's being used, and the amount of books that hadn't been touched in years and years, and really kind of curating their collection. And we talked about what were the community's needs for space and how might the library start to adjust. And they ended up having bookshelves that could actually move so that the room flow could be different. What's also interesting about technology, we do a lot of work with UNICEF Canada, and we're looking at childhood well-being in Canada, and we are ranked terribly 17th out of the top 27 countries. And in our work with children, we have been learning how tactile kids are with books. So all the technology, and they love screens. My little nephew at 2 years old, they got a new stove, and he went to touch the front of the stove and was frustrated that it wasn't interacting with him, like they just see something shiny. But the point is that tactile and having books and that experience of still holding a book we're seeing that it's running right through all age groups, but it's still the number one way children want to engage with books. So I think a physical collection is still going to continue with us for many, many years. But having the adaptability and flexibility, which this plan does actually pointedly say that we want to accomplish, is a big part of it. So yes, we do, yes. And actually the architects that went on to build an addition used the insights from the work that we collected to make sure that their additions that they were building were actually aligned with their community's needs, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Councillor Powell's comment and what you mentioned, because I have one kid's in software engineering, the other kid's in the Masters of Information program there at Western. There's a lot of overlap between the two programs, and a lot of times one needs the other one's help. So I'm watching it in real time. I'm going to ask you a question. If it's too specific, just tell me it's too specific. But you talked about change, and we have to change, and we're looking at our community, and you mentioned the newcomers. And my question to you is, how does the library adapt, or what do they do for that? But there's also another change too, and I want to ask your opinion on this too. One thing we're told over and over again is that we're an aging community, right? So the second question would be, how does the library adapt to that as well?
Okay. Sorry, just remind me of the first question. I want to make sure I answer it properly. I got the aging one.
Okay, how does the library adapt to the aging community and to the changing community, like more newcomers coming in?
Okay. So one of our missions at Overlap is to democratize design, and that's just another way of saying when we work with organizations, we want to make sure we're not precious about our methods. We're process experts, we're not subject matter experts. So we're very intentional about working with the library and training them on how to go out and do this continued engagement. And a big part of our work with them is to reinforce that idea of co-design and continued community engagement. So we don't believe in designing for older adults. We believe in designing with older adults, understanding what are the barriers that are keeping them from accessing the library, what are the things that they just need in life, and how might the library partner with them. So it's really about a holistic view to solving those problems.
Anyone else?
And I just have to add that this library team was incredibly enthusiastic about going out and doing that work, so it's lovely.
Councillor Carley?
Thank you, Your Worship. One final question, which I think has a lot to do with what Councillor Gatward was saying. When we talk about age groups, and when we were in school, I'm sure I can speak for a lot of us here, we went to the library from school. Right. So our classes would go down to the library for a visit. It would start at kindergarten or whatever it would be, and you'd all march down and you'd go in and do your thing. Is that still happening today? And is it happening as it did in the past? And if so, how is it being implemented? Because of today, it's a newer generation, so to speak, or the millennials, as we like to call them, generation, and how are they utilizing it? Because we talk about children wanting to play with the computers and the iPads and the laptops and things like that. So how is that all intertwining with the youth of today in schools as well as in part of the library system?
So I can't answer specifically for here about this school board, but I can speak to more broadly what I've observed across many sectors that are working with children and then the wider library work. Information is shallow and plentiful. Deep information, reliable information, valid information, sorry, I said shallow and wide is what I meant to say. And then the more comprehensive information is deep. And where libraries are coming in and where library expertise is coming in is helping kids be able to kind of get rid of some of the chaff and be able to find resources that are deep. What we're also finding is that it's about skill building. Librarians today can't know everything about everything like they seem to, when I was growing up, they did. They seem to know everything. But it is changing too quickly. So how do they become curators and create those accessibility pockets for kids today so that they can actually empower kids to do the right type of research, to access the right type of information? So I think it's a balance and it's a constant change. I think technology, you can't be afraid of it. We have to embrace and pull it in. And the library sector is doing that in a way that is just incredible. They're not fearful of it. And I would say even in the last 5 years, there's been a change. There was a little bit of, oh my goodness, this wave is too big, we can't keep up. But it has really changed, and I see that people are now focused on solution-based problem solving. So this is coming, what are we going to do to respond?
And in that same note, are you getting support from the province in doing stuff like that?
So the last budget that came down, we work with the Federation of Ontario Libraries, FOPL, Public Libraries, and we also do work with OLS North and SOL, Southern Ontario Library Service. And there has been funding that is recognizing that libraries play this unique place in our communities. There's really nothing else like it that is across Canada. So I don't have the specifics on the budget, but I think, yes, it's there. There is support there.
Any other questions by members of council? If not, thank you for your presentation. We're
Thank
pleased
you.
that you arrived.
Sorry, I can't close this off. That's okay. All right. Thank you.
We're to item 4B. I therefore declare this meeting a public hearing regarding noise bylaw exemption request from South Brant Legion. And there is a staff report on this matter. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this request at the present time? Is there anyone present that wishes to speak to the request? Third and final request, is there anyone present who wishes to speak to the request? If not, I declare the public hearing regarding the noise bylaw exemption request of the South Brant Legion will be discussed when 7A1 item is discussed. There is a staff report regarding the matter. Public hearing is closed. Thank you. 4C, I now declare this meeting a public hearing regarding noise bylaw exemption request of Shush Inc. at the Paris Fairgrounds. And there is a report about that. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this request for a noise bylaw exemption request? Second call, anyone present who wishes to speak to the item? Third and final request, is there anyone present that wishes to speak to this noise bylaw exemption request of of the Shush Inc. to be held at the Paris Fairgrounds? This matter will be discussed later under 7A2 item. I hereby declare the public, as no one is here to speak to it, public hearing closed. Thank you. We will now move on to item 5, adoption of minutes from previous meetings of council, and there are 3 of them. Someone have the resolution regarding the minutes who would like to present it at this time?
Someone has the minutes, I'm not sure who.
It's on, we believe it's on someone's desk.
Yep.
Maybe it's Councillor Cardy?
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bowman, the County Grant Metro, May 23rd, 2017 County Grant Council Special Meeting Committee of the whole minutes and Special Grant County Council and camera minutes be approved.
Thank you. Is there anyone wish to speak to it? Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a correction. Last month's meeting, the May 23rd meeting, there was
May 23?
Yeah.
Yes. Page?
I don't know what page, but there was an in-camera recorded vote, and I was absent for that vote. So, and I see I was listed as voting in the affirmative. So if we could just make that correction.
If it's an in-camera matter, it must be discussed in camera. So are you willing to move that it be added to the list of in-camera items?
If that's what's required to make the correction.
I'll refer to the clerk if you wish to question me.
I can make that correction.
What is the correction?
Just that Councillor Miller was absent for the in-camera
Oh.
discussion last.
And it has you present? I see. Request granted. Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, just a comment on the Brant County Council minutes for May 23rd. It states in there was a funding request for the Burford Canada 150 events. Again, I don't want to take this the wrong way because I am in favor of the Canada 150 events that are taking place in the county, and I do understand that there is money left in the little bucket of grant money and such where this comes from. But as I said, this one is for Burford. There was also one put through some time ago for St. George, what they were doing with their 150 that I was opposed to, and the rationale for being opposed to that is the fact that we had made a motion as a council that we were not going to support other Canada 150 funding because we were doing our own Canada 150 event. So I just wanted to make the comment that it appears that we're kind of going against what we motioned there, that we were not going to support these 150 events financially because we were doing our own event and didn't want to span out for the other ones. And I wasn't here at the meeting, and I'm curious as to if there was any discussion as to why that was happening.
This will not be included in the minutes. Is that correct, or will it be?
Sorry, which set of minutes?
Whichever set the member was referring to.
He's just discussing a business arising, I
Right.
believe.
Well, we're
He's
not
discussing
to-
a matter, but it's not a correction, right? No.
It's no change to the minutes, so the motion stands. Does anyone wish to speak to the minutes? To the motion, rather, adopting the minutes? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, we're at business arising from the minutes, and there is an A, but B has been raised. So how do we wish to deal with item B of Councillor Pierce? He's not making a motion.
He's just seeking some clarification on the discussion, if anybody has an answer.
And how would you deal with this then? It's not listed on the agenda. He has raised an item which is his right. So how will we deal with it?
If any member wishes to respond as to why they supported that.
Thank you. Councillor Bauma.
I don't have an answer for you, but I remember when we passed that resolution, I voted against that because I said, sure enough, we'll be seeing other things coming throughout the year that we will support and want to do. And sure enough, we have. And so again, I don't have an answer for that one either. I was confused at the time when we passed it because I knew it would not survive the year, and it has not. And again, I still continue to support things that come up through the year. And but yeah, that I'm still mystified by that one also. But I think that's one of those things that we'll just have to get used to, John.
Is the matter closed? Thank you. 6A, resolution supported at May 23, 2017 meeting, application for natural gas grant program. Prescribed resolution required as outlined below. Does someone have this recommendation? Councillor Powell, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Cardy, regarding the application for natural gas program as listed in our addendum in the red. That's what's referred to.
Did you have a question? Should have read it. It has not been read by the members.
I can read it if Councillor Powell would prefer.
Thank you. That's correct.
The motion reads, whereas access to natural gas infrastructure is limited in parts of the County of Brant, and increased access will provide more affordable and reliable energy, and whereas expanding access to natural gas within the County of Brant is a key strategic priority supported by Council, and whereas access to natural gas for residents, farms, and business will provide an economic advantage, and whereas natural gas access can provide residents on higher emitting fuels with a lower carbon energy source that will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, therefore be it resolved that the Council of the County of Brant formally support an application submitted by a natural gas distributor or supplier to the Government of Ontario for a grant from the Provincial Natural Gas Grant Program to expand the natural gas system to service the County of Brant. That Council supports making a financial contribution towards the proposed project in an amount equivalent to the property tax that would be recovered on the new natural gas infrastructure for a period of 10 years as per the Natural Gas Grant Program requirements, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded along with the application to Ontario's Natural Gas Grant Program.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions by members of council or comments by members, if any? No. Councillor Gatler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to see this come back so quickly, and thank you to the clerk for that. And I certainly hope the group that brought this forward are very successful in getting this grant funding for their area. It's a great idea.
Any other member? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Consent items. Consent items to be approved. Number 1, application for noise bylaw exemption, South Brant Legion for July 28 to 30, 2017. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Powell. The consent items to be approved, 7A, 1 and 2, be approved as written. Would you like to read them?
It has been circulated, so we have the wording in this case. No, you don't. Thank you. Any member of council wish to speak? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2, application for noise bylaw exemption, Shush Inc., Paris Fairgrounds, July 14 to 16, 2017.
Mr. Mayor, the 2 of them are on there.
I did not realize that. They're both on the same day? We should vote for them individually, though. We voted for the first one. Let us now vote for the second. We have a motion on it. Councillor Balma?
Oh, absolutely. Sorry.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Consent items to be received. There is a list. 11. Consent items to be received, circulation folder rather, 1 to 12. Any item, any member of council wishes to withdraw from the list? Councillor Miller?
No, but I do have a question for number 10, B10.
Did we have all these together? Question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The letter was thanking us for our...
Which item are we talking about?
10, Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care correspondence resulting from meeting with Parliamentary Assistant at Roma Conference, ambulance wait times. And my question is, they mentioned a few initiatives that the provincial government's doing to try and reduce that. They mentioned that in their letter. And I know when I was on community services, the manager of ambulance would show us the wait list and times we were without an ambulance. Do we track wait times at the hospital? If not, could we, or is that too onerous? I'm just wondering, because how do we know, example, the offload nurse. I don't know how much better it is other than anecdotally. Do we have any way of tracking that?
We have a report on that matter that's circularized, so you will have the opportunity to read it. Councillor Balma?
We do track ambulance wait times, but as far as patients waiting in the hospital, we have no way of tracking that unless the hospital gives us that information.
Any other member of council on an item? If not, have you presented the motion?
I will right now, but I'm going to
Thank you.
throw a little wrench into things here, Mr. Mayor. It's got here, consent items to be received, 7B and C. On this page is 22, but if you read B and C, there's 23. And I've gone through B, and I can't find it looks as though maybe number 11 might be the oddball here.
Probably.
Oh. So the,
It's probably just something else broken out into a number instead of a one.
can we have the correct number then?
There's 22 items in total.
Okay, so moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Powell.
Thank you.
that, 7B and C consent items to be received, 22 of them.
Thank you. Questions by members of council, if any? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee reports, Kanesville Community Center Fire Hall Advisory Committee minutes of May 30. Question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Community Services Committee report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cardy, that the Community Services Committee report of June 5th, 2017 be accepted, noting there are 9 items. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions by members of council? Anyone? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. So, are all members voting on the reports? Trees Conservation Committee report.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Coleman, that the Trees Conservation Committee report of June 6, 2017 be approved.
Questions of the chair? Councillor Bowman.
I understand there's some exceptions and things in there, which is fine. I was just curious, if I may, through you, Your Worship, when someone takes down a bunch of trees, is there any stipulation for them to replant trees elsewhere or to replace them with something else, or is it just an exception to cut down a bunch of trees typically?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a good question. Every case is treated individually.
Okay, thank you.
And Clayton Thompson, as you know, is our forestry officer, and he does what he can to work with the owners to save as many as he can. And the applications we've seen, some have, some haven't, but each case we deal with on an individual basis.
Very good, thank you. Just curious.
Your Worship? Your Worship?
Councillor Simon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. Forest Ontario launch of 150 initiative. You've got noticed, documented that you've got 2.5 acres of open land to plant trees on. Have you been in touch with Chuck Beach? Because he's always looking for areas to plant trees in the county of Brant. And it would be a good start point to touch base with him for his tree planting process every year.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't have 2.5 acres identified. This is just saying that if a resident has 2.5 acres of land, they're eligible for this program.
Okay, I'm missing, okay, thank you.
No, that's good, because more information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The communications press release, I haven't seen it, but that doesn't mean it didn't go out. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chair. Have you seen it, or has anyone seen it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I've not seen it, and if no one has, I think that's something I can take up with Adam, because I know he was following up on it.
Because I think it's very important that we let the people in the county know we have lots of rural areas where people have that much land, and it's a great program if people want to participate and plant reasonable trees. Thank you.
I'll definitely follow up.
Thank you.
Any other member of council? Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the press release can't be happened until after this is approved by this committee and council, am I correct?
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Good point.
Any other member?
If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Planning and Advisory Committee.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Carter, that the planning advisory committee report of June 6th be approved. There be 6 items.
Questions by members of council? Planning. Anyone? No questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. John Noble Committee of Management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Buma, that the John Noble Home Committee of Management report of June 7, 2017 be approved, noting there are 8 items. And one of the items is being the governance model that has been looked at, examined, and brought forward. Yeah.
Questions to the chair? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Pocket Center Carousel Town Hall Advisory Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Cottle, that the Bucket Center Fairfield Time Hall Advisory Committee minutes for June 12th be received as information.
Thank you. Question by members of council. Councilor Bowman.
I hate to be nitpicky, but the minutes do say that Councillor Powell was not at the meeting.
That's not Councilor Powell, Member Powell.
Member Powell, David Powell.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. Yes, that's why I'm confused. Very good, thank you.
Too many Powells.
Yes.
He's only been there for 2 years.
Thank you, Councillor Powell.
Huh?
Well, I think the way to correct that is to put the initial. Well, it's surnames. Two people.
I've always found on the meetings, Mr. Mayor, that when it's a member of council, they'll always preceded by councilor, whatever.
Yes, my apologies. It's been a long day.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. County Brant.
Good one.
City of Brantford. Jordan. Committee minutes. This says June 12th.
Yes, there'll be another one coming shortly. Moved by myself, seconded by Member Cardy, that the county receive the minutes of the Joint Services Committee held on June 12th. No recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councilor Buma. Just the makeup of the committee, is it just 2 city councilors on the committee?
2 city councilors and their mayor was appointed.
Okay, and then we've got 3, and,
We have 3 councilors and our mayor kind of comes, which is lovely.
okay, that doesn't happen too often. Second question, are you still looking for suggestions, ideas, et cetera, et cetera?
We've taken the feedback that we got back in the original list that I think that we all got in our Friday files, and we've kind of condensed that down, and I think that's probably covered that we're going to be getting some recommendations back from staff.
Okay.
At our next meeting, which will be in August, I think, yes.
Okay, you were at you met with the chamber. They have some suggestions. I thought they were good suggestions worth looking at anyways. And then I was talking to Bruce Noble that night, and I thought he had some good ideas as well. So if you get a chance to talk to Bruce, it might be a good idea.
I think the goal of the committee is to do something achievable and fairly simplistic in the relatively short time frame that we have left in this session of council. And so, but be more than happy to entertain anything that gets forwarded to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bluma, the emergency measures that is mentioned, do you and the committee mean using that term for emergency services during a catastrophe such as flooding or a tornado? Is that what you're...
More in planning execution of catastrophic events, yes. Although that's more for the next minutes that are coming up in a couple points.
But we would be sharing our police and fire with each other in the event that there was an event in one community or the other?
We weren't discussing sharing services, we were discussing working together in the event of. Just the ability of, so that we would know what they're doing and they would know what we're doing. Because right now we operate two standalone emergency operation centers if something were to happen, and even just something as simple as if the next logical location to have an EOC would happen to move down the river in the event of we could immediately take a city facility for our uses for something that was happening in our neck of the woods, but just to be able to coordinate those things between all the services and have a process in place for that.
Thank you.
Any other member of council wish to speak? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Corporate Development Committee report.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that Corporate Development Committee report of June 12th be approved.
Questions by members of council? 14 recommendations. Anyone? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Public Works Committee report is next.
Mr. Mayor, approval of myself, second by Councilor Miller, the public works report from June 13, 2017, be approved. No number 6.
Thank you. Questions of the chair? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I've received a few phone calls after the last Public Works meeting in regards to the Rest Acres Road. The consensus was thanking you for allowing them to speak that day. And then they were just wondering that it was stated there, as it is in here, that there will be a public meeting. Has there been any date set on that as yet? I told them that it would definitely be posted when it is. Any idea when that might be? Okay, and I also, just if I could, Mr. Mayor, just to take it one step further, I also told them that, as you did that day, Mr. Chair, of that committee, that this was a draft. Nothing was final on that, and things could easily be changed on it, and they were acceptable, I guess I could put it, of that response for now. So thank you for that.
Any other member of council wish to speak? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Brant County OPP Detachment Committee report. Do you have any questions? Councillor Gatward, please.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Pierce, that the Brant County OPP Detachment Committee report of June 13th be approved. And there is one recommendation.
Questions of the presenter by Councillor Miller. Start with.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the chair. Do we know where that $279,000 plus HST is coming from? Is it coming from reserves, development charges? I don't know.
I'm the vice chair, actually, because the mayor is the chair of our committee, but it is in the budget already.
Is it in the budget?
Yes.
Any other member wish to speak? It's a big step forward for the proposed new police center. If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have the addition of the recent County of Brant, City of Brantford Joint Services Committee of June 28, 2017, which was yesterday, follow-up meeting. Councillor Baumann.
Moved by myself, seconded by member or Councillor Cardy, that the County of Brant, City of Brantford Joint Services Committee report of June 26, 2017 be received. And noting that there is one recommendation.
And you haven't had the opportunity to read this yet, so please take the time to read it. And are there any questions? Councillor Cardy.
If I may, Your Worship, if I may just make a comment. It's okay, Your Worship.
Yes.
I would like to say that it was a good meeting yesterday. I believe all parties that were involved in the meeting from both sides were very good working with each other, and we did come up with some good thoughts and ideas to move forward in the next steps. So I think it was a very good meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that completes the list of reports. So we'll move on to staff reports. The first being Nith River Sanitary Siphon Twinning, Award of Construction, M. DeHont report. And there is a resolution to be presented by Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and a second by Councillor Miller, the Nith River Sanitation Siphon Twinning Award of the Construction be moved ahead. This is a good news story, Mr. Mayor, when you receive money like this.
Questions? Councillor Baum.
I apologize for my ignorance. I agree that this is a good news story, but what exactly is this device? And I understand it makes it just does it just help things move more efficiently? Thank you.
It's under the water, in the line, and the pipe goes underground in the river there, and it helps move things through and moving from the development in the north end down.
Very good. And there's no chance, obviously, for backflow or not. Thank you.
Any other member have a question? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Very important facility. B, AMO delegations. Clerk's reporting. And there is a recommendation. Someone must have it.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Powell, that the following delegation request be submitted for the 2017 Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which name is AMO. Meeting with Minister of Tourism, Culture, Sport, update on Walk Center / Careful Town Hall project and fundraising campaign. Meeting with Minister of Economic Development and Growth, Employment Land Designations, and meeting with Minister of Health and Long-Term Care concerns regarding relocation of long-term care beds.
Thank you. Questions of the presenter? Councillor Baum.
If I may, a comment, Your Worship, because I became more aware of this yesterday, as most of us have read in the paper, there's a move on for these large long-term care facilities to move beds and consolidate. Where that's actually coming from is a ministry directive to get the level of care up to a certain level. But of course, without any increases in funding, that means that the only way that these large operators can gain those efficiencies and care levels is to consolidate. And there's a number given that's around 250 beds in a facility. And so what Rivera is doing, the one that we've been reading about in the paper, is pulling their beds out of here, and I have a sneaking suspicion Paris might also be affected by that, and consolidating in Ancaster, but also pulling out of Grimsby and one other location. There's 4 municipalities that are affected in order to hit those targets given by the ministry. So then, since this is a ministry directive, but we get to blame the long-term care facilities for doing this. That I think this is an excellent idea to be able to sit down with the Minister of Health and say, hey, you know, we understand care levels need to be where they are, but then you also need to be providing enough funding so that we can keep long-term care beds in the communities. Because if we have a loved one in Paris or in Brantford, and it's difficult for me to travel far, then suddenly you have to drive out to Ancaster now, which can be significant when you're coming from Burford or further away. And so that's why this is something that's critical for us to be involved in. So those are my 2 cents on that recommendation to meet with the Minister of Health. Thank you.
Councillor Cardy.
And just to add to that, Your Worship, I find it, as I said yesterday, I find it a little amusing that the minister, the provincial government states they want growth and they want high-density housing in these areas that we live in now, but now we're going to lose beds that we need in our communities to help our aging population, such as the baby boomers are getting into it now, and it's just going to get worse. And I find this not acceptable from my own opinion. It just doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm glad that the Minister of Health's been added to our recommendation for the AMO conference delegations. We need to add 179 beds, not lose 79 in our community. And I know Rivera is a for-profit organization and they have to find efficiencies and design new beds to meet ministry standards. However, when I look at that lovely building out on Park Road North, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if the ministry would give us those beds and the money to renovate them for our community? So we need to really come up with a super presentation to convince the minister not to take those beds out of our community. Thank you.
Any other speaker? What are we doing regarding the email from John of a Home? Is that added to the list?
Yes, that's added to the recommendation that was read.
Everyone clear on that? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That completes
Mr. Mayor?
item 9, I believe. Is that correct? Pardon?
Yes, Mayor.
Tim,
Mr. Mayor?
information reports.
Mr. Mayor?
Pardon? Councillor Pierce.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I think we need to circle back to 4A because Rachel gave that fantastic report and we never did anything with it. So I'd be more than happy to make the motion to receive that.
Which item are you?
The delegation, 4A. We never did anything with it.
Oh, we don't have a motion on that?
No.
Yes, it needs to be done by motion. Moved by Councillor Pierce, second by Councillor Balma. Discussion by members of council. Anyone wish to comment? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for clarifying that. 10, information reports, none listed. 11, communications, County of Brant Public Library, request to access library capital reserves for site selection and evaluation of a proposed new library facility in Paris. Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To put it on the floor, I'll move that the county grant the request of the library board to be able to use their funds to do some research in an upcoming project as the letter outlines.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Bauma, is there Comment by members. Councillor Gatlin first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I looked at the background on the first and second page, and they've got 6 steps that they want to complete. Number 5 is ensure community consultation. I think that community consultation should come earlier in that list. In fact, number 2 is site selection. Shouldn't we consult the community first and say, here's the 4 areas we're thinking about building a library or a new library, and get public feedback? That's my comment. And do they have a proposed year for this build? Because as we know, we've got fire halls and a police station to build, and I'm wondering how these capital projects are being prioritized by senior staff.
Councillor Chambers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll attempt to, I'm on the library board, so I'll attempt to answer the questions. First of all, with regard to the steps, there are the steps listed. I think you have to look at them as not necessarily sequential steps, but concurrent steps. Obviously, there's overlap, and obviously consultation has essentially begun already with the strategic plan. So it's not that you're going to finish 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then finally start consulting with the public. I think that just makes sense, and I think that's the question, how that can be answered.
Thank you.
With regard to the time, just like the police station that we have been working on for probably, longer than I have, 8 or 9 years, I think you have to begin the process. The library board does not have a date in mind. What is on their mind right now is to go through the process, to engage the community and do the process well, so the eventual time when and if construction will begin, the due diligence will have been done. So don't look that there's going to be a new library next year or next term. It could be, but more than likely it's part of the process. The reason for engaging the consultant is to make sure the due diligence is done in a transparent, open, and meaningful way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, the public process, will it be happening within the county of Brant, or will it, and it probably will, but will there also be a public meeting of some kind for question and answers for the Paris people, since this is a Paris library that they're discussing, and hopefully there'll be more than one. So that was my question.
And to answer that question, I cannot foresee any scenario where a public library branch in the town of Paris would exclude the consultative process with the people of Paris. It obviously is front and foremost. So if your worry is that the Paris people won't have a say in the Paris branch, whether it be status quo or moving into the future, I think that goes without saying. And that's part and parcel of the objectivity of the consultant's work, is that it be done in an objective way with consultation from the people of Paris, obviously, and from the rest of the county as well. As the presenter of the strategic plan kept referring to the library, we have to look at the library as not a building or a place, but as a culture or an entity. And when we talk about the library, we're going to the library, we're engaging the library system. So obviously the people of Paris would have a huge say in what is their library branch.
If I may, I have one more question, if I may. Is there any timeframes attached to this whatsoever as far as the public process and the completion of the site locations or location?
Again, I can't give a specific time when the project will end. I think we're more interested in getting the project to begin rather than to end at this point. And again, there seems to be a concern that the public will not be consulted, and I don't know how to allay that concern, but this whole project is, again, in keeping with the strategic plan, the engagement and the involvement of the community is first and foremost on the library board's mind, as evidenced by the strategic plan. So if we're moving forward, we're obviously committed to engaging the public. But as far as an actual time frame, I can probably get that for you once we get underway, but the resolution basically is to allow us to use our funds to begin the process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No question about the site investigation, just a procedural question. Is this before us because the library board has to ask council permission to access the reserves? Is that correct?
This expenditure is not in the budget, although the funds are in a reserve, so it's in keeping, according to the treasurer's advice, that a resolution of council be passed to enable that to be accessed, since it's not in the budget. The funds are there, but it's in a reserve. We just have to tap into it and have the permission to do that.
Thank you. Any other member? If not, all in favor? Oppose? Carried. Questions and answers thereto by members of council? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Friday, I had to drive north and North Wellington, and I was up around a little town called Damascus and Kenilworth, and I quickly realized something dramatic had happened the night before, and of course that was when all the rain happened, and I guess it peaked around here Saturday, and I'm just wondering, was there much damage done to any of our infrastructure here at the county from all that water coming down?
By the flood. You'd like the flood coordinator to respond to that request? Thank you.
I think Michael's got his hand up. He would like to respond.
I thought you were the flood coordinator.
Well, Michael's General Manager of Public Works. I can tell you high level some things and then let Michael come up. As you know, and we sent an email around to members of council, there was 900, at the peak, there were 900 cubic feet per second of water coming through Paris. Cubic meters, sorry. Coming through Paris in the afternoon, it peaked around between 3 and 4 o'clock. Yeah. And the normal summer flow is 20 cubic meters per second.
Quite a difference.
So you can see, and we did hear, though, from the GRCA that this tells you something, those of you that saw the River Saturday, that in 1974, it was double that. So, I mean, that's amazing when you saw the volume coming through. We were, different people were out looking at it, you couldn't see anything, but there will be an assessment done of the diking and gabion system through the town to ensure that we've been doing that, as you know already. We moved into phase 2, but we'll immediately go out and have a look after the water subside enough. Now, Michael, you probably have more detailed information on culverts and so on.
Councillor Cardick?
Thank you. We had talked, I think, at a couple of work department meetings last year about the ownership of the Gabion Wall is the county's ownership, I believe. And because of that, we have to continually, I guess, check erosion, especially after something like this. If there's a process, what is the process to have that all redone or fixed? If you could, or would you like Michael to speak into that? Well, either way.
He's managing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Through your worship, in terms of the dike assessment, we're going through basically a comprehensive assessment process. We're doing geotechnical. We flew it with LiDAR, which is lasers, and there'll be a set of recommendations that come out of that report, and it'll have, one of the likely scenarios is we're going to suggest that they raise the dike behind sill apse. It's probably inadequate at this point. So there'll be a number of recommendations like that. Similarly, with the gabion walls and the concrete walls, there'll be condition assessments, and there'll be, it's got your 25 years from the end of life or 10 years or whatever, and then there'll be recommendations for future replacements. So that's what'll come out of that process. And then accordingly, we'll start developing a funding and implementation strategy for those once that assessment's done. In terms of damage from the flood this weekend, we did get off fairly lightly. We had damage to the canoe launch at Penman's Dam. It's going to be about $12,000 to fix. I have authorized emergency repairs so we can try to get it fixed. We hope to have it back up and running for the long weekend. We had a bit of erosion damage at Glen Morris, the park in Glen Morris, and we had some damage at Bean Park. Some debris and a fence got knocked out. We lost a couple picnic tables and a couple dock sections. So again, we got off fairly lightly. We did close a few roads, but they were closed for very short periods of time. So.
Councillor Gettler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I noticed that the Oxbow Road was closed. Still, I thought it was Sunday when I went by. Was there any damage down there?
Your Worship, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hardy.
Thank you, Michael, for your brief report there. Michael, for knowledge purposes, do we have, or is there a government implemented funding for things that occur like this that we can claim, or does it just come out of our own insurance? How does that work?
Your Worship, in this case, for the damage on the weekend, it would fall within our deductible, so we're probably going to just have to pay for it out of the existing budgets. However, usually after these things, sometimes the province will dedicate some emergency funding, and then people that had damage, like ourselves, can apply for that funding. So we'll be on the lookout for that in the coming weeks.
And did we get the debris buildup at the dam in Paris this year like we did last time we had something like this?
Well, not quite as bad as last time, but I've got film on my phone of it happening. What happened is it all came in there. There was a lot of it, almost half the size of this room at least, and then it broke away. And then my brother actually was out there about 9 o'clock and saw it actually broke away and go downstream. And when I was there at about 12 o'clock, it had built back up again. And we have film of it. These logs come over, they catch the boil, come right across the face of the dam and get directed into that spot. But you recall last year, or 2 years ago, there was a mound almost as high as this council chambers at the peak, and we had to authorize somebody to go in and remove it. So it's a weird little hydraulic situation there. And I hadn't seen that happening back it's been a more recent phenomena. I don't recall it happening like that back in the past, say 10 years and back, that kind of thing. But it happened again this year.
And Paul, could that be because of maybe some hydraulic differences in the dam and what's happening with the dam itself and undermining and all that?
I don't know. I was wondering that as it was answered, but I don't know the answer.
Thank you for the discussion and information on the flooding. It was serious, very serious. We were fortunate that it wasn't worse than it was, because it might have been. The future will tell us something too. With that, we'll move on. That's completed. And any other questions, I guess I should ask? Are there any other questions by members of council? If not, we'll go to number 13, resolutions, and you'll note that the one that was listed has been withdrawn. Other business, Councillor Powell.
The Physician Recruitment Committee met 2 weeks ago yesterday. The chair is John Bradford, and our recruiter is Alice Preston. She's been doing that for a number of years. One of the tools she has is she visits this time of the year the universities that have medical schools like McMaster, Western, Toronto, etc. And right now, Brantford and Brant County are kind of holding their own. In other words, physicians retire, we've been able to replace them, so that's good news. Brantford itself is still short for physicians, and in our area, I think Dr. Williams either has retired or will be retiring soon from general practice, but he is going to be working out in the nursing homes. And the family health team has not put forward any requests for new physicians at this time. There is a new doctor working with Dr. Villar up in Ayr. Now, Ayr covers more than Brant County. It also goes north from there. The toughest part is to get people who can work in mental health. Very difficult to get doctors or support people in that area. As you know, it's becoming an increasing demand throughout the province and with the opiates and other things. So that's going to be a problem. The other part, looking forward, there'll be more doctors retire. Our population is growing, and it'll be difficult to continually replace and bring in new people all the time. So it is an ongoing situation, and she again is plugging away at it, so hopefully it'll work out well in the future.
Any questions of Councillor Powell? Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, just a comment. I think part of the problem is too, I have a nephew of mine that just completed medical school, and the unfortunate part is that more than 2/3 of his class, once graduated, went out of province. So I think the issue is actually, definitely at that level, and I think, the province had better, have a revisit things so these doctors, once they're graduated, want to stay in Ontario rather than go to other provinces. And I think that's the unfortunate part we're going to have, is you had a class, I believe there was 42 of them, don't quote me on that number, but they're going out of province. So it's not a good situation to be in for sure, especially with the doctors around here retiring and that sort of thing, right? So just a comment.
Councillor Powell.
Just to add to what Councillor Pierce said, the other problem we have is when a doctor graduates, he has to find a residency in order to become fully qualified. Now, I think we had about 19 or 20, even after 2 years, could not find a residency. And the unfortunate downside, a 25-year-old doctor who graduated McMaster committed suicide because he was so depressed with that situation. So it's another area we need to correct, and the government needs to take, far faster action to solve that problem. You can't have trained people and have no hospitals that will take them on as a resident.
Serious, very serious. Thank you for your comments. That completes that item. Resolutions. Oh, we did that one. Other business, and I believe now we have left with a list of in-camera items. Is there an additional item of new business? Councillor Chambers.
I didn't mean to interrupt, Mr. Mayor. In resolutions, it occurred to me that a congratulatory resolution may be in order, and I'd like to move that our Brant County Town Crier be congratulated for his achievements in the recent competitions that were Canada-wide and province-wide, I believe. I believe he finished, I don't want to embellish his achievement, but I believe he finished 5th in Canada. So a motion to congratulate Larry Davis, our long-standing town crier.
Thank you. And second by Councillor Gatward. Discussion, comment? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now I believe we're left with the list of 8 items for in-camera. May we have a motion to go resume in-camera session? Councillor Simons moves, Councillor Pierce seconds. All in favor? Pardon? Question, Councillor Coleman.
Member Smith is here from the Kansville Community Center.
Yes.
And he's part of this, and I was wondering if it'd be possible that we could move Kansville Community Center report up to first, and then if he can stay for the in-camera session, then he will leave after that.
That would need to be included. I don't believe there's any problem with changing the position. Are we agreed to that we can change it to item number 1? Can we agree to that separately? Council agrees to that. Now, the inclusion in the in-camera session for that part would have to be part of the motion. Well, we can amend the motion to and include, okay, in the session. I think it's can be part of the, do you want just a separate motion? They've made it separate.
They've already made it.
So the first motion is go in camera. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second motion, Councillor Coleman, Councillor Bauma, to include the delegation in the session. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We will be in camera.
Paul, you said that was only half, eh? Of
Yeah.
74?
Councillor.
Moving myself, second Councillor Goward, that the Kansville Community Center, Black Fire Hall Advisory Committee be renamed Kansville Community Center Ad Hoc Committee.
Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Completes that one. So D, Corporate Development Committee.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Miller, that the County of Brant accept the offer by Curtin Signer, Inc. to purchase approximately 5 acres of land in the Brant Forestry Business Park for a purchase price of $849,500 Canadian, and that the bylaw authorizing mayor and clerk to execute the agreement of purchase and sale be brought forward to council.
Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
15E, it is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Boma. COU 1721 Barker Street, the agreement of purchase and sale from Paris Land Development for the purchase of the unconstructed portion of Barker Street and legal description as part of Barker Street, shown on Plan 492 and part of the road widening. Land known as Part 3, 2R6627, adjoining this portion at the purchase price of $75,000. Be approved.
Any question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next,
Right here.
Councillor.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Simons that whereas the collective agreement between the County of Brant and Oxley Local 256 expired on March 31st, 2016, and whereas at the Community Services Committee meeting of September 19th, 2016, the committee approved the mandate of an average 2% total compensation increase per year for the 3 or 4 year contracts. And whereas the county's negotiating team reached a tentative memorandum of settlement with OXU, achieving an average 1.78 total compensation increase per year of a 4 year contract, that county council ratified the memorandum of settlement.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Got another one?
Nope, that's it for in camera.
That completes the list. So that means we can go to, that means that we can move on to bylaws. Does someone have that?
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gatward, that the following bylaws be now read a first time, and that would be bylaws 1 through 19, and noting that there's one that wasn't in our original package, and that being number 18, appointing a fire chief.
First readings of bylaws. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gatward, that the following bylaws be now read a second time and all clauses and preambles be adopted. That would be bylaws numbers 1, 2, through to 19.
Second reading of bylaws is listed. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Is there any bylaw that any member wishes to question or ask about? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually going to ask to have them pulled if I could, D and E, and voted on separately if I could.
The request is that first reading bylaw, that the bylaws be split. So what we will do then is extract 93.17, 94.17 from the list.
Please.
And deal with separately. Third reading the bylaws as listed with the exception of 93-17 and 94-17. How does that deal with us, with the bylaw approving all action at this point, because they're separate bylaws? Right? Yes. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Third reading, bylaw number 93-17.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, for D&E here, 93-17 and 94-17, I can't support this. I've stated in previous meetings, we're looking to charge our residents downtown for parking. I know there was discussion we had that we were going to make special tags for those residents that live in the downtown core to be able to park there. I'm not sure where that got to. But with the number of residents that are living downtown, I don't know how many residents there are in the exact downtown core that would be utilizing these parking lots. But I cannot support charging them for parking because, well, not because, I can't support it, period, in the sense that they live in the downtown core, they've got parking spots that are allotted to them, and as I say, we've talked about having just some sort of hanger in the window that states, in fact, that vehicle does belong to a resident that lives in the downtown core, and if we think about this, it's not a ton of money that we're talking here, but in essence, it talks about long-term stay and that sort of thing. I can't support charging for this, period.
So you disagree with charging for the space, you think it should be free?
We had talked about, yes, to answer your question, yes. We had talked about getting a tag or something in the window that stated the fact that, this vehicle does belong to a resident that lives in the downtown. And no, you're right, I cannot support charging them for parking.
There was a former Reeve of Paris who lived downtown, was a businessman, and he had to rent a parking space out of the downtown area. I can give you his name on demand. Councillor Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, a couple things. These parking spots are not given to these people. They're not their parking spots. They are public parking spots that can be used by anyone.
Right.
And this is only for the purpose if they're going to be going on vacation and having their cars there for a week or two at a time without being moved. Okay, that's the reason for this. Or if they have two couple cars. Okay, it's not for the average person that's in and out every day to park it overnight. This is for the extreme people that are away on vacation or have a second car that isn't moving every day.
I get that.
That's the only difference. And it's temporary until we get the parking totally under control in Paris, which we're working on, so.
Councillor Palmer, please.
Yeah, I think maybe the misunderstanding was just that we were going to hold anything in abeyance until we came up with a permanent plan. And I thought about that, and you know what, $2.50 a day is probably cheaper than anywhere else you can pay for parking, and it's only in those extreme circumstances when they're away. The problem you run into if you just give them a tag and say, you're free, is now all of a sudden if a car doesn't move for 40 days, there's nothing we can do. And then it becomes a potential liability issue for us. And so by just saying, if you're going to park over 48 hours, You just have to fill this in and do that. It's a very reasonable way of making sure that those cars aren't staying in one place forever. And that's why I'm in support of that. The other option is that, we actually sell specific parking spots to the landowners that they have permanently, but then someone's still paying for them that way. And since everyone has the right to those parking spots at some point or another in a public parking lot, I think this is a workable solution.
Yeah, and I understand where Councillor Pierce is coming from. However, even if they went away for 2 weeks, at 10 days times $250, that's a lot cheaper than getting a parking ticket every day because your car is there illegally.
I'm sorry, does any of our staff managers, like Mr. Bradley or Mr. Emerson, know how the city deals with their tenant parking downtown?
No.
Do they have to go into that parking lot and deal with it and pay for their parking? I don't know.
Allison, Your Worship, Allison was the front person on this, if she could respond to it.
Through you, Your Worship, we did survey a number of different cities, various ranges of permits that they give out. Some as high as $25 a day in larger cities, down to approximately, I think the lowest one we got was $1.75 a day for this. The cost is really to cover snow plowing, with the logic being predominantly people will be going away in the winter and these cars being stationary for that amount of time. So to accommodate for that and just the administration of the program. And again, really the fear being we didn't want to get into designating specific spaces because then it would be a higher cost, and we would also get into issues with the maintenance of those specific areas in the parking lots.
Thank you, Allison. The only reason why I bring that up is because I believe as we're a growing community, we're getting into an unfortunate, inevitable situation where sooner or later we may have to get into that as a permanent thing for everyone to pay for parking. I hate to say that, but it's getting to a point where it may come to that.
Anyone else? Third reading of bylaw 93.17. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bylaw 94 then, sir. Third reading. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Completion. That completes the bylaw. That completes the agenda. That completes